Hey guys, LevelCap here, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Gaming, the news show where we cover all things FPS. If a story in particular interests you, be sure to check the description for links to all news I'm covering today. Longtime Battlefield player Spasmo made a fairly lengthy and detailed post on Reddit about him getting banned through the FairFight system, and it really exploded as there's been a lot of other players who have been banned by FairFight who, in fact, were not cheating. In fact, some players who are even full-time streamers and stream all their gameplay were banned. And so there's clearly something wrong with the FairFight system. It could be due to squad XP boost, increasing the score per minute beyond a realistic level. People aren't quite sure yet what it is, but we do know that there is a problem. Now, of course, no anti-cheat system is perfect, and FairFight, because it is based on stats, has to really be careful about what stats it takes into consideration when banning players. And I think the community really just needs to be diligent about this issue. If you've been banned for no reason, or rather for not hacking, tell EA, DICE, Origin, etc. I'll leave links to the support channels for all of them in the description. The only way issues like this get resolved is if DICE has the information to reproduce the issue internally. I can think of nothing worse for a gaming community when the anti-cheat software starts to ban the most skilled and dedicated players. In other Battlefield news, Xbox One owners can now play Battlefield 3 and Bad Company 2. They were added to the console's list of backwards compatible games this week and should play quite well. Unfortunately, the frame rate is still 30 FPS, but it is smoother overall. People looking to play Battlefield 3, though, should be aware that you need the actual disc to play on Xbox One. In other World War I shooter news, Verdun has been updated with a new faction, the Scottish. The update also added the pattern 1914 Enfield bolt-action rifle. If you're a World War I buff, and were disappointed by Battlefield 1's lack of historical realism, Verdun is certainly worth checking out. And if World War II is more your thing, the World War II shooter Days of War is hitting Steam Early Access in 2 weeks. Days of War aims to be somewhere in between Counter-Strike Go and a historical shooter, with fast-paced gameplay set in a historical context. Visually, for a Kickstarter game, it looks pretty fantastic. The devs put out a detailed roadmap for their early access plan that covers everything they intended to do with their game as development progresses. And in more modern shooter news, Rainbow Six Siege got a game update this week that addresses a bunch of issues introduced during their winter content update. The update doesn't seem to do any balancing, but does address a lot of the annoying bugs and visual issues. Ubisoft recently announced a second year of content is coming to Siege. I'm looking forward to it because despite its rocky launch, Siege matured into a pretty competent game these past few months. A lot of the game's major issues have been ironed out, but there's still some pretty big legacy issues like the extreme light to dark transition, making it impossible to see people outside of windows, and doorways is still kind of a problem. Star Citizen is poised to have a very big year as well, with Alpha 2.6 released, launching the game's FPS module, and the crowdfunding nearly at $142 million. We might finally start to see finished content for the game released this year. The first expected piece of finished content is part 1 of the game's single-player campaign, Squadron 42. That should hopefully be out sometime this year with true multiplayer content to follow. Right now, it sounds like the devs are putting together a roadmap and community outreach updates, so we should know more soon. The other big sci-fi game of the year, Mass Effect Andromeda, is supposedly getting a multiplayer sometime soon. The devs confirmed back when the game was properly revealed that the beta for the multiplayer would happen, but until recently we haven't heard much about it. The game's lead designer confirmed news about the beta will be coming out sometime this month. BioWare is still very hush-hush about Andromeda, but they have said the multiplayer will be more closely tied into the game's single-player gameplay. In hardware news, the Nintendo Switch has a price and release date. The console launches on March 3rd in 2 varieties, both for $300. The only difference between the 2 bundles is the color of the controllers. The Switch will come with a variety of accessories to support its portable and home use. All versions of the Switch will be region-free and come with 32 gigs of internal storage that is expandable via an SD card. We also now know for sure that the Switch runs at 1080p when it's docked and 720p when it's portable. That might be a little disappointing for more hardcore gamers, but probably the biggest concern people have is battery life. Nintendo is advertising 3 to 6 hours of portable playtime depending on the game, which sounds pretty good. The Switch is clearly designed as a home console first with a portable option. It's not designed to replace the Nintendo 3DS or your smartphone. Even so, 3 to 6 hours is plenty of time for a commute to and from work. It's also possible to charge it via USB while on the go, so you can always plug in a USB battery pack if you want extended playtime. Really, the only big negative to come from this announcement is that the Switch will rely on a paid online service for multiplayer, much like Xbox Live or PlayStation Network. Nintendo is notorious for their lackluster online experience of friend codes and confusing store platforms. The new system, Nintendo Online Services, is an attempt to address and streamline those issues. Interestingly, it sounds a lot like the service's functionality will be controllable with your smartphone. The service will be free until fall this year though, so I guess we'll get a good chance to review it before we have to pay for it. Nintendo also confirmed a bunch of games will be coming to the Switch outside of the expected launch titles, like Skyrim and Xenoblade 2. If you want all the details, I have a link in the description that covers everything. Last week I reported on Razer's prototype 3-screen laptop, Project Valerie. Well, unfortunately for Razer, it was stolen, along with another prototyped Project Ariana, a VR projector. Both prototypes were stolen while Razer was packing up their displays at CES. They're offering $25,000 as a reward for information leading to their return, which is pretty crazy. These prototypes must have some serious tech if Razer is willing to shell out that much money for them. In our last bit of news, HP is currently selling a VR-ready desktop for about $600. Using a couple of discounts, the HP Pavilion 560 becomes a very affordable, not only gaming PC, but VR-capable PC. And this is exciting because VR's biggest problem, biggest hurdle right now is becoming affordable. It's a very fun medium, but there just aren't enough games or gamers to play with right now. So that's the only thing holding it back. As we see VR gear and technology becoming cheaper and cheaper, the reality of VR becomes more and more likely. Anyway, that pretty much concludes today's episode of This Week in Gaming. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.